it's funny because when I was in Deloitte, I was looking at elements that were processes that were very slow, and then I was like, there has to be a way to automate that. So that was kind of where my business focus on development started, because I was like, I'm in finance role, but there are so many processes and so many things that must be able to be automated.
Hello, I'm Paulina, and we are back in Bits and Bolts with Paulina. Today with me is Niklas Bork Bøgh. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. I struggle with Danish for the last 11 years. Still can't make it perfect.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
Shortly talking about you have quite a journey in the finance and CFO world, starting from having a finance degree in Copenhagen Business School, being CFO of telemarketing startup, teaching statistics at CBS, working in Deloitte. That's a common point we have in CV. I also been there for a year.
Oh, nice.
All the way to being a product management in financial modeling specialist to product management. Right now you are in the scale up finance when you work as a senior AI product management. That's quite a journey. So
yes.
And I miss one very interesting point of your CV, which is being semi-pro CSGO gamer.
Yes, also did that.
How that combined with all the finance world, that's quite an outstanding point.
Yeah, 100%. So from I was very young, I've been playing a lot of computer games, and I would probably be defined as a gamer. And I've had this dream, I think, inside of me since I was a child to be a pro gamer. And I've grown up, and I've looked up to what was at that back in time called the MTW, where a guy named Dennis Sonic Sørensen was playing. And then when I was studying at CBS, I randomly started working with him in the IT department, and then he was at that point he was not so much into gaming, but he had been a very large pro gamer in Denmark. And then he got offered this new role to be the head coach of what's called Astralis back then, which is a huge Danish gaming. Most people probably know it if they do gaming. And then that kind of like sparked my again like the thought about pro gaming. So after I was about to finish the CBS, most people were going out to work, and I was like, if I should ever have a chance of becoming a pro gamer, it's now, because I'm already old, and I'm getting older and older. So my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, she supported it. She was like, but if you want to go for it, then really go for it, because I don't want like half-assed. So I went all in, and I was playing Counter-Strike and doing theory and stuff like that for like 12 hours a day for 2 years, and we got pretty far with the team, but in the end it was just too much of a trade-off from family and friends and the girlfriend, and like I barely had any time to do anything else. So in the end I was like, maybe I should just use my finance degree to something. So that's kind of the story there.
That sounds like really intensive period, but well, you took your shot, you tried. It's good to have no regrets.
Exactly. I think as I'm getting older and older, I actually look back at that point in time in my life and feel like I was extremely motivated back then, and it's really nice to have felt that at least, and that's also something you can put into your work, and really, if you find that spark in your everyday work life, then the motivation just comes. I think so. It's nice, and it's also very, very fun to have tried it out. I think if I didn't try it out, I would always regret it. So now I did it, and it was a fun period, intense but fun, and now we're here.
Sounds like a perfect opportunity you took, but what do you think you took from being a gamer professionally or semi-professionally to your current work in the finance, in the mindset, how do you work with product, how do you work with leadership?
Yeah. I think a lot. So I was what is defined as the in-game leader. So I was basically the leader of our team, which you wouldn't think that five guys playing computer games all day would have any problems. But I assure you, there are many interpersonal problems when you are playing 12 hours a day together. So I think that managing the people expectations, setting up the culture of the team, making sure that everyone was feel like they were heard, and there was many emotions, and like trying to cope with that in a high-paced environment, I think was many of the skills that I could then bring to the table when I moved from pro gaming, semi-pro gaming, because it's a universal skill to be able to collaborate, to be able to generate a culture where you really feel like people are being able to perform to their best of their ability, and that's something I think sometimes is overlooked in the general like business world, because it's yeah, maybe sometimes it's not maybe what's most focused on, I would say. If, for example, in Deloitte, right? In Deloitte, they
Yeah.
are very result orientated, which is like a very good thing. But sometimes when you are very focused on the goal, you sometimes the kind of miss the target, because the people that need to do the work doesn't do it properly, because they're not motivated just from a goal, basically. So does that make sense?
Yeah, in Deloitte, I think it's very focused on the outcome and, personal being seen personally in your personal development. It's not always as much focus on the teamwork also, and how do we perform as a team, maybe to
Yeah.
the customer, not always internally, because I think because you are not in the so defined teams in Deloitte, you work more on your, for your own sake.
Yes.
Uh,
And in
but
Deloitte, you
yeah,
know
go.
that there is a X amount of people who will get promotions, and so you are obviously in the same team, but you are basically competing against each other, and that's also a culture that obviously brings out the best in some, but for a lot of people, that's not really how they thrive, right? So I think that's also why you have a pretty high employee churn in general in consulting, because of this model, right?
I think consulting, have many issues. For some, as you mentioned, for some people it can bring them to shine, but it's not sustainable culture on the long term. Also, for majority of the people, because you put a lot of hours. It's usually, especially in the big four companies, you have high pressure, long hours. You need to deliver. You need to be shown. You need to do internal work, customer work, billable hours, and I
Yes.
think high stress and high pace and this kind of environment, no, it's not for everyone to being able to thrive.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And also think that most people who are in that high pace, high like hour, like a lot of work, a lot of stress, often also gets sick at some point, right? I'm reading a book around the how leadership culture change, and it's a long story, but basically we went from like people at the assembly line where they had no responsibilities, and it was just like they didn't have any stress because they didn't have any responsibility, but they also didn't have anything they could do about it, right? So that it was like quite simple. Now we give a lot of people like a lot of they are responsible for a lot of things, but they don't have the capability of doing decisions. So and that's also what I'm seeing in Deloitte, that a lot of people are working extremely hard, and then you are 3 times as likely to die from stress in Denmark as you are from being run over by a car, which is or die in a car accident. So I mean, stress is a problem in general in Denmark, I think.
Yeah, also what comes with stress, it's autoimmune diseases. They done some research. I personally had some in the past, together also with following up the burnout 2 or 3 times in my life. But also there is research done that autoimmune diseases is caused by high stress. So that's also one of the reasons, which influence in negative way people's health in this case. So
100%.
if you have stressful culture at work, it's holistic. It influences your personal life, burnout, lack of time for the family, friends, or no work-life balance, and and so on.
Totally. So yeah.
But how did all brought you to the finance? Where the finance interest came from in your
Oh,
life?
oh, that's very far back. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be rich. So I think that's probably what sparked it all. And I was talking to one of my parents' friends who was a lawyer. and growing up, there was not like super many people with fancy degrees, so I couldn't like speak with a lot of different, like there wasn't a lot of people to talk to, but he was one of them. And then I was talking to him and I said like, I'm thinking about, going to university or something like that. And then he was like, I think that's a very good idea, first of all. And I was like, I'm thinking about studying law. And then he was like, don't do it. Like, it's super boring. You'll just die. It's like, don't fucking do it. Like, honestly. And then I was like, okay. But what should I do then, do you think? And then it's like, but what do you like? And I was like, I want to get rich. And it's like, maybe finance is the thing for you. But he was like, but 100% CBS, Copenhagen Business School, where I went, he was like, the culture there is completely you. Like, it doesn't really matter because if you do finance, you have like 1,000 options afterwards. You can do like many, many things. But so I basically chose Copenhagen Business School not because of finance, but more because he believed, and I think he was right, that the culture there was more like how I am. In law, it's very the same as in Deloitte, where you have to be like everyone against each other. When we studied finance, it was like everyone was in the same team. Everyone tried to graduate at the same time. If someone developed an Excel model that could help the others at the exam, it was just shared freely, like open sourced, and that was like a lot more like me. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Culture makes a lot of, I think, importance. That's how I ended up in engineering at some point, by transition later on a bit into business. And I could see big clash between, typical engineering culture versus, for example, typical business culture, or, coming CBS versus DTU, if we're talking, more Copenhagen environment, where people are coming from.
Yeah.
And that was interesting clash, and you're going in between, which is, for example, tech consulting, which is crossing in between. So here, for example, coming to your journey, we going, you came from finance, we went through gaming, but then, IT came to the picture as well, and being, AI native development and, developing AI focused finance technologies. You are working right now on AIC4.
Yes.
How do you get to this combination? Because you could go traditional finance journey, being into banking, finance, and so on, but you decided to go a bit differently.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that as a gamer mindset, and as I've always been very much like at the computer and also very tech interested, like in general. But it never really clicked for me. It's funny because when I was in Deloitte, I was looking at elements that were processes that were very slow, and then I was like, there has to be a way to automate that. So that was kind of where my business focus on development started, because I was like, I'm in finance role, but there are so many processes and so many things that must be able to be automated, and that is obviously via tech, right? So that was the spark, and then I did a lot of very crude development in Deloitte, and then when I went on to scale up finance, the first thing I started was supposedly doing financial modeling, which is very like hardcore finance, right? So no tech, but just raw finance. And we tried it out, but pretty quickly we could see that there wasn't really a business case for it in general. Like, it was really hard to develop that part of the company because the monetization is super difficult. Uh, Short story, like when you do financial modeling, it's for raising money, right? So you don't have a lot of money when you need it, but then if it's successful, then you get a lot of money. So a lot of people do like percentages of the rounds if they're successful and stuff like that, but that's a very long monetization kind of like a life cycle. So in general, we kind of a little bit shut that part down from the beginning. And then the CPO, he had some personal problems in the company, and the company was super young, right? At this point, it was like 8 months old or something. So there was no product people other than him in the company, and then there was me, and I was the only person that was in the product department at that point. So they were like, everyone was pointing at me like, then you must take over. And I was like, I don't even know what product does. Like, I have no idea what that is. So I had like 2 months without him, more or less, where I just had to kind of make do as you do in a startup world, and that's kind of where I started the bridge between finance and obviously product, and with product also tech arrives, right? Because that's a symbiotic relationship, I think, like between product and tech. So that was the journey for me in scale up finance. And then after a couple of months, the CPO asked me, maybe you should become a product manager. And I was like, I've never heard about this role. What does it mean? You know?
What
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, like I was like, it sounds good, but what is it? Um, and that's kind of where my journey started. So I started reading a lot of books, as I think a lot of product people have done, because there are no real product, I think, education as it is right now in school and stuff. So it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of reading books and trying to figure it out as we go. So that was kind of my way into the product management side and into product. Yeah.
That's quite a journey to come from, but it seems you were going, from two different directions, from gaming, from more tech oriented and a bit management, then from the finance, and then you put it all together in the end. But how do you see the difference of developing, traditional finance products versus AI native
Yeah.
development?
So I'm obviously not super high experience, because I was, as you know, now a new product manager in what at that point was a SaaS idea, SaaS enabling consultancy, basically, right? And software enabling, and that part was a lot different, because we didn't pivot. We have the same overall goal, but we pivoted on the technical part. So we changed we have the same concept we've always had in Scale of Finance and now called New, where we are trying to make the friction of founders starting companies and then having access to financial aid easier. And that's also what we're doing in our consultancy, where we do fractional CFOing, right? Where we are like, new startups or smaller startups don't need a full-time CFO, but they need someone who helps them with finance. So fractional CFO is a better way, where they have a part-time CFO. And we can see from that part of the business, there is a lot of need to kind of solve this problem. And then in the beginning, the first couple of years we were there, we were trying to do it via SaaS, so via platform, or like traditional SaaS, where there was tools, and it was super simple. But finance is never simple, so it takes a long time to develop. And and do we need a budget forecasting? Do we need it in app? Do we do it on Excel? Like, there's many problems. So it takes a long time to develop, and what sets us aside from other larger FP&A tools, all of these thoughts on the SaaS part, right? And I think that's when Claude Sonnet 3.5, I think it was, came out. Then we tried it. We've been trying this AI angle for a year or two. One of our founders is very AI mindset, and he already very early on wanted us to move towards AI, because he could just see it was going to be very big. But it was hard to find out how. Like, we all wanted to use AI, but where do you use it? How do you use it? And when Sonnet 3.5 came out and we got a new CPO, the decision was made to change the direction on the technical side to do AI native work. And your question was if there's a lot of difference on AI, traditional software and AI, and I think it's two completely different things, in my opinion. Like, you cannot compare them almost, because it's deterministic versus non-deterministic development, and I think the mindset is so different. Like, you come from a world where you have a problem and then you solve it. 100 the tech that you're building will always act the same. If there is a bug, then you squash it, and then it never happens again. When you have LLMs in the mix, then millions of different types of bugs can occur, and it's so early on. So there are so many infrastructural problems as well, in general building. So I think that, yeah, it's very different, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think also now the finance is very regulated industry, what comes with additional complexity of building product for this particular niche. Because if you have, bigger variety of the output you can get, you don't need to focus so much on the, how detailed you are. But if you need to be, here you have law, you have to being able to be compliant, a bunch of regulations, SCAT and other, institutions which can come after whatever you're doing to be able to check it. Do you find this that it's elaborate a lot of complexity, and do you see that it's harder for people to trust the AI native products versus traditional ones?
Yes. 100% like trust. I think when we did the change of technical structure, I think that that was one of our main concerns, so to speak, the trust. And then I think we wrote it on a big whiteboard, like trust is key, basically, right? And if we can achieve trust in our AI system, then we have basically won, in more or less. Um, and as most people who work with AI know, it's very hallucinations will happen, right? And so it's about really getting that down. And I think both the tech is increasingly getting better. We've been developing it for a year or so, and just the change from Sonnet 3.5 to 4.0 and Opus 4.1 and GPT-5 now, I think in general is becoming increasingly better and better, both at doing small types of calculations and also like making less mistakes in calculations, making less hallucinations, like in general. But there are still problems where you have to accept that the AI will make mistakes. And I think one of our main thought processes around it is that humans also make mistakes. And if a CFO does a small like accounting error or whatever, you are like, but he's just human, so he cannot get his job 100% correct. And I think the same mental model kind of needs to be applied on AI at some point, from a user perspective. That okay, if the AI is always right when it matters, but sometimes on the smaller parts, it's maybe less intelligence, less burnt tokens, then they cannot get everything right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. It's the same as we're working with people, the same we're trying to figure out, ways, okay, how do we work with AI and what processes do we use, how we verify, the work it comes with, can, LLMs work with each other? Do we work, how to work as a humans with LLMs? So I think, it comes to the new ways of working, which we all need to, find what actually works. And I think it's still quite new, on the such a broad perspective and usage in the, it took 3 years when we had, GP2 going more broad. So I think, both different industries and people are still putting, processes and ways of being able to test it.
Yeah, yeah, and it is super early days. I think in general, like I was looking at the Claude code over the weekend, and I was shocked that I still have to run it via my terminal in VS Code or in Cursor or whatever. Like I was like, there must be some just a GUI wrapper or something on top of this because this is a shit experience. But I couldn't. Maybe there is something that I didn't find, but I think just the fact that I spent 10 minutes and didn't find a proper solution, it tells me that there are so many directions that where the infrastructure, so to speak, is still missing. Like you have Anthropic or OpenAI just going down for maybe minutes or seconds or hours, and if you're relying on your LLMs providing a service, and all of a sudden the provider just is going down, and you cannot you could just get thrown an error every time you try to get a response via the API to get an LLM response. It's like what's happening, right? And I think that's and I would have expected that scaling, for example, would be a simple problem, because obviously more tokens and equals we pay more to some provider, and then they would be happy. But it's actually hard to get token limits up because they have such a high usage. So it's like you have to make a case for why do you need a higher token limit and stuff like that. And I was just like, but you will earn more money if we use more tokens. So why is it a problem? Doesn't mean
Yeah, exactly. Demand doesn't follow what is available. And also, AI came with, as me coming someone from, more tech background with also being more in infrastructure, it came whole new problem to it. Okay, how do we, host it? How do we come, how do we make it cost efficient? Because LLMs take a lot of, resources in the infrastructure part of view, and cost of it is also quite high.
Yes.
And also, how do we get hardware which can maintain it? So here it's also, and a lot of organizations want to host their own LLMs. They don't want to use public models, at least, or they use public models which are hosted privately.
Yeah.
So here comes also whole new part of the IT, which was not such a big problem on the mass level. It was more niche. You had researchers here and there, some companies doing it, but it wasn't on such a big demand. So I think its problem is everywhere right now. And what goes with it? It goes security. How do we use it? How do we train it? And so on. And also something what you mentioned, which I wanted to ask, there's, as we coming about the output, of course, LLM is nothing without the good data. So, being able to get a good data, and problem which comes up recently, AI generated data, and can we use them for training our models? Because I've seen some companies completely ban data which are for last 3 years, created from last 3 years, but you cannot do it in the long term. Because for example, if we're going to finance, law is changing, regulations are changing. We need to being able to keep up with world which we're developing. What are your thoughts about, finding good quality data and AI generating data when building AI native products?
Mm. So I think that when you say training your own model, are you referring to more like fine tuning
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we usually take, generic model which we can
Fine tune with some
yeah.
specific data
Yeah.
sets, right? Yeah, 100%. So we haven't really had tried it out with fine tuning and training models. We saw that I think it was OpenAI that came out with an article about fine tuning specifically for finance would make a lot of sense. But honestly, right now we are seeing just using the raw models they are actually really good without the fine tuning, and we see it as an optimization play once we get further down the line. But for right now, yeah, so we're not fine tuning at all. But what we are doing though is that we are obviously having a lot of knowledge from because we have a working, functioning consultancy business that are doing the same concept. So from there we have a lot of learnings, and we have seen so many different cases that when we are creating our evals structure and setup, so we are more like trying to sculpt the prompting side towards that from the beginning, instead of doing the fine tuning up front. If I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it makes sense. You took a different approach. So you talk to your customers, find their problems, and based on this, you build the product
Yes,
which is supposed to solve their problems.
exactly. So it's I think it's the simple approach, but it's also, if you read, when I'm reading product books over and over again, it's exactly what they're saying, that you need to just release something, and that you're not 100% embarrassed about, and then get some feedback and then iterate, basically, right? So that's the progress we're in, and I think we're looking at Lovable, for example, who did more or less the same. They had what they define as free releases until they actually hit something where the users were like, okay, this is amazing. And I think that's the same you have to go through here, because the problem space is so large that you have to be really, really pedantic about what is the problem we're solving, and then really navigating the user towards these specific cases or the specific unique selling points that you have, so that they understand, okay, this product can solve this for me, therefore I want to pay for it, basically.
Exactly. You want to hit the point when you bring the business value to the customer to being able, so they want to pay you for this. And you can get feedback fast at the beginning, as you mentioned, also Lovable does. And because even in IT, we have, fail fast and get the feedback loop fast, because, you don't want to have, build something what no one wants and
Exactly.
release it in the year, because that's useless pretty much.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, the longer you are in the basement developing, the more risk you have, right? So it's like, yeah. So shipping incrementally, I think, is in general the way to go, right? And then switching, as we are a startup, we also have the luxury of being capable of switching fast. If we see a group of customers asking for one specific type of feature, then if it's a small one, then we have the luxury of saying, okay, maybe we can pivot a little bit to try this. We wanted to go this direction and we had this in mind, but maybe we can just try this small thing out, and then we start building. So I think it's all about having. I think for AI and for most software development, it's about having the right fundamentals in order, and from there it gets a lot easier to start building on top. And I think that's a lot like the problem where a lot of companies get into the trap where they think they can just start really quickly and then build on top, but then they get like this really bad structure underneath, which at some point just crashes.
Yeah, and if you have to refactor everything, that's you putting months or years of tech depth and work which is required to make it, especially later on when you want to scale. How do
Exactly.
you? Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no. I was just vibing because I saw a LinkedIn post recently of a guy who wrote that we had a working production app, and we had users paying money, but then all of a sudden, we couldn't scale, so we need to refactor. It took 18 months, but after 12 months, we were out of money. And I think that's I think that's a lot of AI and products can get into such a jam if they're not very detail oriented in the beginning of the fundamentals.
Yeah, I recently also seen a guy who done, vibe coding application within a few hours, but then he was trying to sell it, but then people wanted to buy it, but you put one tech specialist and there was like, hey, this has public access, this is not secure, and so on. So you also need to, even if you're building something what brings value, you want to build it fast, you still need to put at least some on the focus on building something what is stable, reliable, what is secure. So
100%. I saw a guy, maybe it's the same, who is like a cybersecurity guy, and he was like, I would like to, if anyone is up for giving me the vibe coded URL, I'll see if I can hack it, basically. And I think that's the mental model that a lot of people who are trying to vibe code stuff needs to have, right? That it is, you can make a proof of concept, but it's not a MVP, it's not a minimal lovable product or whatever the abbreviation is today. It is
exactly.
a proof of concept, right? Basically.
Yeah, it's not production ready, and I think that's a point which a lot of people who don't have tech background are missing. They think AI gonna make it production ready.
Maybe at some point, but AI needs to get a lot better before we get there.
Yeah, I fully agree. We are not there yet. Maybe we will one day.
Hopefully.
But with building something, collaboration is also something what I see as a big problem between, within tech team, between tech and business, between various teams, between different members. How do you find it to being able? What is the most surprising lesson you find and learned by trying to align, people which you are working with?
Yeah. So I think that in traditional tech development, you could have this process where you scoped something, you did a PRD or whatever, you had a handover, and then tech went away and built it. And then you maybe had some check-ins, but in general, you had the scope and it was deterministic, so it was easy to kind of see, the specs and then see how did it go. And you didn't really need to there were small decisions maybe on the way, but it wasn't as critical. Now I think with AI native development, the part of the product people I think has increased because you can get a lot further into what do you want, and then you can maybe build a prototype and let's say lovable to show the actual, then you get all of the problems, you can do the prompting, like some of the prompting at least, prompt engineering or context engineering or whatever your vibe is, and so you can really get really really far until the actual implementation phase. So before it was like the handover, but now the handover is, in my opinion, more collaboration, because then once you're handing over something that is further down the line, then you also need to work together because there's so many moving parts in an AI building phase. So it's like the prompt needs to change, and the architecture needs to change, and maybe your tools needs to change, and so it's like, and if you change the tool, then you change how the AI behave, and if you change the prompt, you change the way the AI behave, and if you change the architecture, you also and if you have two teams working on the same kind of graph at the same time, you have so many moving parts. So really getting tight is in my opinion, like at least what we experience is the key, that you have really tight collaboration between everyone who is building and really strict ways of working, so you don't change something, because then if you change too many things, it's impossible to do quality assurance on it afterwards, because then you don't know, was it because we changed the tool, or was it because we changed the prompt, or was it because we changed the architecture? This doesn't work now, basically, right?
And so trying to align what you're changing at the time to being able to check what results are you getting with it.
Exactly, and I think that there is so much, if let's say that you want to have, in theory, you could have this outcome driven mindset where you're like, okay, as a product person, I would like this outcome from this project, but then the possibility, the options, like the outcome possibilities are so huge, because you could potentially make like 1,000 prompts and then 1,000 expected outcomes, more or less, but you will still have maybe 1,000,000 cases that you didn't think about, different wording, different thought process, different cases altogether. So it's like you need to set some sort of eval before or what at some point, but you cannot embrace it all because it's just too large of a space where you are changing. So it's like, I think looking at LLMs as black box helps a lot. And it's like you put something in and then you get something out and you don't really know what happens. And then every time you change something going in, you will always change what's coming out, right? And then for development side, it gets crucial that you are extremely aligned in your, because I'm not capable, and maybe it's just me who are young in product or whatever, but I'm not capable of handing over all of my thoughts around a project because there are just too much information that I need to give them. We could have like a 3-day meeting here and I could start explaining about what I want. And then in the end, it might be something completely different we want, because then the developer has like a great idea, as they very often have, right? And then, we change our course a little bit. And then all of these 1,000 cases that we just made, they are now not usable anymore. And then you need to start over. So you need some way that you can do a cycle that is efficient and running smoothly. And I think the only way to do it is if you sit very tight with the development team and the product team, and then incrementally talk about, okay, we're thinking about doing this change, then okay, what will that do? Okay, but then maybe if we did like this, and and then you kind of develop it more or less together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that you have to collaborate much closer together to being able, as whatever changes you do, they have much bigger impact on the outcome changes versus if you do it into, traditional software development.
Exactly, because before you could just get a preview branch, and then you could see does this button, when I click it, spin around in the right way? Okay, it does. Okay, perfect. Then you implement it into the code base, and as you have unit tests, everything is running, and it's a lot simpler to do development in that way. So I think the mindset is also that you need to have this more YOLO mindset, because you're never going to be fully deterministic and being capable of having unit tests. Your evals will never be 100%, and so you need to figure out what is acceptable, what you expect of your system, and what does the user think is acceptable, because you'll never get 100% accuracy or 100% reliability or 100% uptime, or
I think that's what people are still learning, as I can see, especially when, AI, it's not yet adopted so well. But with going with this thought, have you seen a big difference between how dynamically you can work in the startup versus in Deloitte or in the, big organization customers, which very often Deloitte or similar companies work with?
Yeah, Yeah, no, 100%. I think that this is just one man's opinion, right? But I think that larger corporations are more like dinosaurs, or like how I like to describe is that it's a big tank ship, right? And it's like there's a 10,000 employees on it, and it's like really, really hard to change the course because it's such a big ship. And everyone is just like pulling their weight on the ship. But if you want to change it like 90 degrees and go somewhere else, it might take like a year. Where when you are in a startup, you're more like in a speedboat, and you're like, okay, let's change that, let's go there, let's go there. So you're like a lot more agile on the way that you're doing your strategy. And I think that's the only real way to actually really get AI under the skin, because in my opinion it's not like when the internet came that was huge, but how I see it, and again it's just my opinion, but it's more like industrialization kind of change. Like we went from like having a lot of people on the farms, and then all of a sudden you have this new machinery that can do 10 minutes work only with one person or something, right? And then what happened back then was the steam engine. You couldn't just apply it one to a lot of the big corporations, because they have managed and like they've set up their corporations and their whole production line in a way that was efficient for what they were doing, right? But then all of a sudden, you cannot just put these engines into it and working. I think that's what we will see. So big corporations, I think most of them will most likely die out over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And then we'll see a lot of AI native startups coming in and taking over the space because in my opinion, and that's also why I'm working so closely with AI today, right? I think it will take over a lot of different parts, and I think a lot of new opportunities will also rise from that, because it's not like no one worked after the industrialization. It was you just mobilized people into doing different types of jobs, right? And I think the same will happen here, basically.
Yeah, usually big companies has a big budget, but they are, as you say, they're very slow with changing the course of action or even implementing stuff. They do like not 2 months plan or half a year plan or year plan. They do 5 to 10 years plan to being able to change any small thing sometimes or course of action or innovate whatever they have. So
Exactly. And I think that someone wrote, I don't remember who it was, that AI is not changing on a yearly basis, it's on a quarterly basis, like that we are being revolutionized with new models or new capabilities, and then all of a sudden MCP servers pops up and new technology, and then like, so it's like every quarter there is like, I don't know if you've seen, there's something new, and I don't know if you've seen this guy with the what it was, the Pelican riding bikes from the AI but AI engineer, but he was also like, he was asked to do 1 year of changes in AI, and he was like, that's impossible. It's just too much. Like he turned it down to past 6 months, and he speed talked through it, right? And it's like 6 months in AI land is like, I don't even like, that's maybe what's done at 3.7 or maybe even worse, right? So it's like so much happens in such a short time. So it's crazy.
that's a lot. Do you think the pace gonna keep going or is it gonna slow down?
Oh, that's a good question. I read a book called The AI Epoche, Danish author, and called Anders Bech, and he says that, and I actually think that I agree with him, that a lot of people think like humans are mostly capable of thinking in linear growth. We're very bad at understanding exponential growth. Of like, so we're like, okay, in the past year this has happened, so that will probably also happen more or less the same the next year. I think that AI is on an exponential growth, and I think it will keep going for a while. Since we're seeing, I think about it a lot, like when you started having hard disks, you had this every year you doubled the amount of storage on the same size, more or less, and that's also an exponential growth. And I think I feel like we're more or less seeing the same with token usage and intelligence. So intelligence to token usage is that even faster, maybe every 9 months or so, it's halving, and that will just that in itself will I think have exponential impacts on how you can use it and for what. Because right now I think that if you put enough intelligence towards almost all problems that people have that are not like crazy, you will be able to solve it like with an agentic setup where you have enough agents that are then, evaluating the outcomes. Maybe you can have like 10 agents doing the same task and then 100 agents evaluating those responses and, figuring out what is the most likely correct outcome. Then you would maybe burn like 100 million tokens, but you will then solve this without a doubt correctly. Does that make sense? But that's way too expensive, but maybe it's not too expensive in 3 years. And then all of a sudden you've solved the reliability and accuracy by simply just cutting down cost on tokens.
Yeah, so I think we have few points of action here, because one is where we now and what can we do with tech we have. One is that it's gonna keep going. Another is the hardware which is coming to to being able to support the AI development. How the AI development also all the use cases which we have or we don't have yet, because you need particular knowledge as you do in finance or other. I think that's also the big area where it can get developed further, where it's not so widely used as it could be.
No, 100%. And finance have the big problem of big data, which is still a huge struggle for AI, right? I think in general, it's a known or acceptable fact that after 100k tokens, you have a high decrease in intelligence and understanding of the context. And in finance, you just have a lot of data. And so it's a problem.
Where do you think finance-specific AI is heading within next future?
Oh, that's a very big question. If I didn't believe that we could automate an CFO, I probably wouldn't be at the right company, right? So I think that with intelligence also comes more and more hard problems being solved. I think right now you can solve, let's call it simpler. I'm finance guy, so simple for me is also quite complex, maybe for most. But and then as AI matures, I think that we can solve more and more hardcore problems. In my opinion, some of the more simple tasks, bookkeeping and stuff like that, is prone to be more or less automated. And I'm 100% sure that a lot of companies I've seen are trying to solve that exact, because it is quite a straightforward process, and there's also so much. You can have a bookkeeper that does well or does poor, and it's really hard for people to know, okay, which is which if you hire again. So there's a lot of knowledge that you can get from an AI quite fast and simple. So I think we're heading towards a lot more automated and a lot more live information on your finances in general. And I think we're headed to a future where you have true companions that can help you. That's at least what we believe in Neum, right? And I totally believe in that as well. That you can have a part, we call it a sparring partner. I don't know if that's an English word, but like someone who actually understands your company, understands you, and has the context and the knowledge to really in depth give you very good guidance on where you are and where you're going. And I think that concept will only increase in value as intelligence are increasing, and automation is also a part of getting that value proposition up, in my opinion.
And how big role do you think prompt engineering have in it? Because one thing is that we have AI which is able to handle and understand everything what our company is doing in financial point of view, but another point which I can see some people are struggling is that we need to be able to formulate what we want from our AI companion in the right way. And we can get very different results, at least currently, depending how do we formulate our prompts.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm a little bit against the mainstream thought process. So right now, the general consensus, as I see it, is that context engineering is a lot more important than prompt engineering is. Maybe it's because I'm already becoming legacy mindset. That could be, but I do actually believe that prompt engineering will be quite important in the near future, because it is what sets apart the expectations of the AIs. And I mean, a lot of the companies that are popping up now, they have obviously created an architecture around and provided tools and software around the LLMs, but the AIs also do a lot of the heavy lifting on the intelligence part, and they can only do that in a good way if they understand what is expected of me, what is the outcomes that you want me to provide, so on and so forth. So at least in my job right now, I see a lot of prompt engineering work can do a lot of good towards building a product where you get what you expect, and that's basically what you're trying with prompt engineering, right? That you're trying to shape this. Let's call it LLM, or it could also be a person to provide the service that you're expecting from it, right?
Yeah, so you can get result which you actually can expect to have some kind of repeatability in it.
Yeah, exactly, and also you can. I don't know, it's a long time ago since I saw it, but there was a guy who in their prompt engineering had a part of the prompt where they asked for every run to evaluate, the run that it just did, and if there was any optimization parts on the tool calling or on the prompt side or anything. And then there's basically just created an entire list he could pull out to think about when he did, iterations on his system, which I think is a clever way of thinking about that, like, it's a little bit meta, but it, you can really harden the prompt engineering side to get what you want. But I think, sorry, I'm very passionate about this one. But
That's great. You have a lot of knowledge to share. So
I think that one of the downsides about prompt engineering towards, if you compare it against context engineering, is that prompt engineering is often very model specific. So once you change from 3.5 to 3.7 Anthropic or 4.0 Sonnet, you all of a sudden you get very different results from the exact same prompt. Or if you actually want to move to GPT-5 or something, then you also get a completely different result than you had before. So without even knowing it, you've also kind of went down a path where you're trying to get a behavior from a specific model, but then all of a sudden you are reliable on that specific model, and if you want to upgrade it, you now have refactoring to do, and that can also kill you quite fast, because you really want to have these intelligence upgrades, but you also then have to put in a lot of effort to utilize them. So and understanding the models, like I'm trying to work with GPT-5 now. I think it's quite good. And then you have this. You need to set the reasoning. If it's medium, then maybe it's super slow. If you set it to minimal, what does that even mean? Like, if so it's like what is the behavior that's coming out? So you need to learn like new models as well and spend time on that, right? Yeah.
And that
So
also goes back, to the stuff you talked about it before, that you change, that even with the keeping the same prompt, but changing the version of the same model, you can get very different results. When if you change the model, with the same prompt, you can get very different results. So being able
yes.
to get the same results from different models and different versions of it, you might need to change the prompt. So you have a lot of moving blocks which are influencing the results.
Yeah,
And the outcome.
completely, and they're also behaving differently on the tech side. So, when you're starting out, you're thinking like, oh, we can just change to GPT-5 or Mistral or use DeepSeek or whatever you are into, right? And then once you start building, you figure out that all of them has a little bit of a login built into their structure, so you cannot just you cannot just flip a switch and then it works. Then you need either use third-party software that has this capability, or you need to have you spend time on development. It could be unstructured output, then all of a sudden it's different, behaving differently, or GPT has this JSON mode, or like do you then, if you want to use Anthropic, do you then need a GPT to make sure that the JSON is there's no errors in it, so there are many moving parts as well, right?
Yeah. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of moving blocks.
Yeah.
But we're shortly getting to an hour, so wrapping up the discussion, I have last two questions. One, as you know, right now there's a lot of discussions if we should go to higher education or not. And in what can it help you, moving forward? For example, you work with a product management and you work with AI, you work with finance and you work in teamwork. Do you think it can be beneficial, or it was beneficial for you going through the finance education with what you're doing right now?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the short answer to that is that it would be I've been debating this a lot with a lot of my friends, and it's kind of like when the internet came. I think that in the beginning you were like it's cheating to use the internet, and now CBS embraces that a lot. I think that you will be set into a working place space where you have internet. So why would you want to test without it? Like obviously there are some elements that make sense, but in broad terms, I think that you will have capability of searching for things on the internet, and what then happens is that when you give that opportunity to the student, you just increase the complexity of the problem, and then you are providing a better. You're getting students that are better at utilizing the tools that they have, and they also get a lot better when they hit the workplace because they are just better at solving the real problems and not doing math by hand or whatever. And I think AI is exactly the same. We need to figure out how do we implement it in a way where it's not like the student just press paste the question in, get an answer done in 5 minutes. And I think we also talked about this at another point where we were hiring at some point, and it was super obvious who just did. AI made everything for them. Once you start asking them questions, they know absolutely nothing about it. That shines through like in 3 minutes. And then the people who knew a lot of stuff and they used AI as a co-pilot, and they just created something that was better than they could have done in the same amount of time with AI. And I think that is how I think about it in education as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As someone who's coming from Polish education first, when we had to do coding on the paper, and when I moved to Danish university, when they test your practical skills, way of thinking, how can you deal with the tech which we already have now, even if it was a few years back. At least DTU was embracing it. I think it's very similar thought. So I fully agree. We need to be able to adapt to where we are now. And
yeah. 100%. I mean, yeah. So I completely agree, and I think that using AI would still have made the education that I took would still have been super hard using AI because the concepts are so difficult, and if you don't put them in the right context, you will just look like you know nothing, basically.
Exactly, and you still should be able to understand and evaluate whatever AI gives you.
Exactly.
And last question: if you had to give one piece of advice to founders building AI native products today, what would it be?
Oh, that's a broad one.
You can
One
make it more
advice.
specific,
Yeah,
or
no. Let me
whatever
think.
comes to mind.
I think that I think that iteration and not is the key, and not being afraid of doing something and then taking the learnings and then from a fundamental standpoint start over, because I think that we have this bias towards keeping we have already done some work on this, so why don't we try to improve it? And I think that with AI you can develop extremely fast, and if you take the knowledge that you have and then utilize that to build something from scratch again, you can build it in maybe 100th of the time, and then you can build it the right way to work in the exact way that you were intended, or that you found out was what you wanted, instead of trying to build something and then change it towards something, then just like out with it and then start fresh. In my opinion, that is probably what will get people the fastest to the goal. But you need to do it quickly, and you need to act like fast, and then you need to do it in a collaboration with the entire team. I think that would be the best way to get there. That's my take. What do you think? You haven't spoken on that, so.
I'm not working in organization building a product, but I work more with a various customer building something for them usually. So it's also a bit different approach versus, but yeah, definitely, iterate, fail fast, collaborate with others, learn from each other, learn the context, also, learn also how you secure. I'm gonna be boring with it, but legal regulations, being secure infrastructure,
Yes.
but because that's what I'm working with primarily.
Yeah.
Also one thing which a lot of people are not aware of, it's, there's a bunch of EU regulations coming to life regarding the software over last year or two. And within next few years, we're gonna get even more. And that's a lot of developers or people who are working, they don't see that they have to be compliant. But if you're not compliant, it can kill your business because that's how the fees, how high they are. If you compare to GDPR, it was €400 versus now it's 4 million euro so
you're dead in the water if you're not compliant.
Yeah,
I think that
exactly.
evals is also a great topic, not the one that we can dive into, but I think thinking about evals from the get-go also sets you up for success, because then you have an idea about your expectations to the system from the starting point. Not creating them, but thinking about how do you want to test your system? Like, what does a good experience look like? I think that would also be very important.
And also don't try to do everything at the beginning. So,
completely
talk to some founders like, yeah, we want to do these 100 things. I'm like, choose 2.
Yeah. 2 is high. Choose 1.
Yeah, that's even too high. Depends where they are, on their journey.
Exactly.
But, yeah. But thank you for joining and for the talk. Learned a lot.
That was fun.
That's it for today's edition of the Bits and Bolts with Paulina. Did you like what you heard? Of course you do. Tell your friends.